Well, hi there. Taylor here with Prep Talk. I wanted to take just a couple of minutes today to chat with you about something that was an extraordinary learning experience for me and my family a couple of years ago. It actually happened back in 2005, where my son and I were in the New Orleans area when Hurricane Katrina hit. Now, I've been involved in the preparedness industry for over 35 years and consider myself fairly well prepared, that almost regardless of what could happen, I feel like my family and I would be in good shape. We'd be well taken care of. But here, my son and I found ourselves out there with no preps. We were 1,000 miles away from home with absolutely nothing to help us in the circumstances and the situation we were in. And so to kind of set the stage for what happened and how we not only figured out how to survive, but how to escape that area, I want to take just a few minutes and relate some of the things that transpired. You see, even though I've been in the preparedness industry for over 35 years, I've also done other projects along the way. And one project I enjoyed was in a related real estate industry. And we had actually scheduled weeks before Katrina was even formed to go out to the Louisiana area, specifically Gulfport, just east of New Orleans, to attend a real estate auction out there for some properties that we had some interest in. And so we had booked the flights and scheduled everything necessary to go and participate in that real estate auction. Just prior to leaving, we were going to depart on a Saturday. The auction would take place on Monday. Just prior to leaving, I just felt impressed that I needed to change our flight plans just a little bit. We were going to be leaving Saturday evening to get out there Saturday night. I decided that we ought to fly into New Orleans probably earlier in the day. So I rebooked the flight so that we would get there earlier. And I'm glad we did, because it actually set the stage for a variety of things to take place to help us not only survive what took place, but to be able to escape. And I'm embarrassed to admit that I really hadn't been tracking Hurricane Katrina and what had been developing prior to our leaving. If anything, probably felt a little bit of interest as to what it would be like to be in a hurricane if it were to actually hit the New Orleans area. It hadn't graduated to a Cat 5 hurricane at that point. So we arrived in New Orleans late in the afternoon on Saturday. And the first problem we ran into as we went to get our rental car was there were none. We had reserved a rental car in advance and expected to be able to pick it up as we always would when we would travel, but there were none to be found. And it was pretty concerning since we had reserved one. After 2 hours at the car rental place, we were finally able to secure a Lincoln Town car. Not quite the car that we had reserved or wanted, but nevertheless it was wheels, and so we gladly took it. And I guess there had been a lot of people at the last minute who decided that they were going to try to get out of Dodge and needed a rental car to do so, and so a lot of those cars were gone. Now, as a result, that had kind of put us back on our schedule just a little bit, but we decided quick to get a bite to eat. And so we went to a local restaurant, and it was bizarre because there was no one there, no one in the restaurant. And we looked around and we couldn't even see any servers. And so as we kind of looked in the back a little bit, we saw all of the employees at the restaurant huddled around a TV watching the development of Hurricane Katrina. And at this time, it looked like it was going to be developing into a Cat 5 hurricane. We got their attention and asked if we could get something to eat, and they thought it was rather bizarre that we would be flying into town that particular weekend when everyone else was trying to get out. In fact, it was interesting. This restaurant wasn't far from the freeway, and we noticed that they had already initiated contraflow on the freeway, meaning that all lanes on the freeway were headed out in the same direction, and they were headed west. And so we felt a little uncomfortable, a little foolish for being there. Nevertheless, we were served, and we thought, well, maybe we ought to look into what's really taking place here more carefully. So we went back to our hotel and immediately turned on the TV to kind of get the latest. We were concerned because our intent was that we would go to church in the New Orleans area on Sunday the next day, and then on Monday just go a few miles over to the Gulfport area, where we would then participate in the real estate auction that we had planned. So that was our game plan. And but as we watched the TV, we noticed that these ominous reports of what was about to happen were not comforting at all. We made a few phone calls and tried to check around and see, what the likelihood would be of it making sense to stay. We felt strongly impressed not to stay. We felt that we needed to evacuate immediately. So we went downstairs into the lobby of the hotel and noticed something peculiar, because even just from the time we had checked in, there were now 20 to 30 people in the lobby, everybody wanting a room, looking for a room, and they were out of rooms. And it was a little hectic, a little chaotic down there. I'm assuming people, for whatever reason, thought if they got into a hotel that was a little higher rise, that somehow they would be protected if the water came in. Well, when we got down there, we just happened to mention, look, we've got a room. Anybody can have it. We already paid for it. We didn't care. We were hitting the road. And so the room was snagged up pretty quick. So now we decided we needed to get out of here. I had made plans earlier that in the event that the Gulfport auction didn't really pan out, I had found another auction up in Meridian, Mississippi that looked promising. And so we thought, well, we're not going to stay here for the Gulfport one. Let's head up north, about 80 miles north to Meridian, Mississippi. Problem was, none of the freeways would permit that. Now, when we would go out on these real estate auctions, we would have to actually drive by and inspect hundreds of properties prior to the auction to make sure that the information that was listed was accurate and that it would be a property that would be worth our while to bid on. And so we would use, at least back then, it was a pretty sophisticated GPS routing system where we could plug into our laptop hundreds of properties, and it would route the properties in order so that it would be easy for us through GPS to go from one property to the next in the fastest possible way. And so we'd have this little GPS unit that would rest on the dash of the car, and then it would plug in by USB into our laptop. And as the voices on many of our GPS units today have different voices, whether it be male or female or whatever, the particular voice on this one sounded like an older woman, and we called her Mabel. And so whenever we referred to the GPS tracking system we used on our computer, we always talked about it being Mabel. Well, we had to turn to Mabel because we needed to get out of there, and we couldn't use any of the freeways. And so we programmed into Mabel to get us out of there and up to Jackson, but to use all the back roads, all the side roads that we could, because we couldn't use the freeway. It was all going the wrong direction. Well, luckily, Mabel was able to accomplish that, and we were finally able to get far enough north past where they had initiated the contraflow, where we could jump back onto the freeway and head towards Meridian. Then the next problem arose. Okay, so what do we do when we get to Meridian? We don't have a room. And so I immediately started calling every hotel I could find. Meridian isn't a very large city, but every hotel that I could find access to, I was calling. Nothing, absolutely no rooms available. Then, of course, as it always seems to go, the very last hotel on our list had a room. And I quickly gave them my credit card number and said, we'll be there shortly. And that is where exactly we needed to be to help weather the storm, because even though we were about 80 miles north of New Orleans and right where landfall was for Hurricane Katrina continued to move north, and it passed immediately over the top of us in Meridian, which caused some very interesting things that I'll tell you a little bit more later about. But I wanted to first of all set the stage with this particular video to give you an idea of why we were there and the lessons that we learned and the things that I hope we can all take from it going forward, that these hurricanes aren't to be trifled with. We need to take them seriously as all natural disasters. But if we use our heads and we don't wait for others to solve the problems for us, that we can escape just about anything. So in my next video, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what happened once we got to Meridian and some very interesting things that transpired up to the point of where Katrina actually hit us. So I'll chat with you again shortly. Thanks.